Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, spiritual life coach and your host of Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on earth today, claiming our sovereignty, seeking greater possibilities in our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality and soul. Listen to their stories and hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words in these conversations embolden and inspire you. Before we get into this week's episode, I want to take a minute to speak to you about Her Inspirations, the sister podcast to Her Conversations. Each episode is an exploration of things we encounter as we embark on our spiritual and awakening journeys. Recently, I've expanded the format. This now includes an accompanying weekly email that also includes additional notes for your meditation, journaling, inspiration, and also links to relevant resources and exclusive content. So if you are someone who's actively seeking growth, listening to Her Inspirations, use the link in the show notes below to join the Her Inspirations mailing list. When you do, you'll also receive the free Embody Higher Energetic Resonance course. My guest this week is Julie Tran, who is a compassionate communication marriage coach. She helps women lead their marriage to peace and paradise without needing their husband to do the work. During our conversation, she shares that although she was successful on paper and had a boojie lifestyle, her personal life and marriage felt hard, and how employing compassionate communication transformed her marriage, and that now, after 15 years together, her and her husband are now more in love than they were during their honeymoon phase. So as always, I begin by asking my guests, Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel that higher energetic resonance?
I feel that when I'm at a place where I'm accepting like all parts of me. You know, like I grew up in a way where I was very masculine, getting a lot of SHIT done, worked in corporate, climbed the corporate ladder. When I left, I was an executive in a commercial real estate company, and it was a lot of masculine energy. And I've had to learn how to shift and develop, like reconnect to my feminine energy. And I remember going through this phase where I was like swinging from one pendulum to another. And I still never felt like at peace. And that's because I realized I was still fighting with myself, you know, like, oh, I'm being too feminine. Oh, I'm being too masculine. I'm not being feminine enough. I'm not being masculine enough. And it's like, come on already, Julie. Like, will you just accept that both parts of you are valid and that in any given moment, they're both showing up for you and in different, different capacities. And what if you just accepted that exactly how you're showing up right now is perfect for you? Mm-hmm. And so when I'm in that state, when I feel complete acceptance for who I am, exactly where I am right now, I feel the energy flow, creative energy flow through me because there's no resistance, and it just feels so good and alive.
And before we go further into the conversation, Julie, I'd just like you to introduce yourself. Talk about what brought you to the work that you're doing right now.
Sure. So I am a compassionate communication marriage coach. I'm as I mentioned earlier, a former executive in the corporate world. And I've been married to my husband for 12 years. We've been together for 15. And I'd say that, there are so many layers to my story, but I think what I'll share today on like how I got to how I transitioned from being in corporate to a marriage coach has so much to do with being a mom. I was a foster mom for 2 years, a few years ago, actually. My husband and I were struggling with infertility. And we did IVF, we did the whole thing, and it just wasn't working. And so, we went to this seminar together where it's like it blew our minds about the world of personal development, right? I don't know. I'm sure you've had a very similar experience. It felt like an awakening for us, where we were like kind of like stuck in this world of like, oh, we have to have a baby, and it has to be biological, it has to look a certain way. But in this experience, we realized that, oh wow, you know what? Like our hearts began to open, and we said to ourselves, why don't we consider foster care? And that's what we did. And 7 months later, we were placed with two very energetic boys. And it was, this could be a whole book, but I'll just say for in this conversation, it was one of the most profoundly difficult, beautiful, and spiritual experiences of my life. I remember, because you have to think about like when these kids come into your home, like they were taken away for a reason. They were taken away because there was, they were dealing with neglect, abuse, and they were probably placed in multiple foster homes. So by the time that they arrive with you, they are so traumatized, they feel so unsafe, and they don't know who to trust. And they act out in ways that most people would find scary, right? And so when our boys were placed with us, those were the kinds of behaviors that we like had to learn how to, deal with and how to be with. I remember at one point, one of my sons said to me, I'm going to burn your house down. Like, I'm going to burn your house down. And I hit the moment where I said, well, something has to change, because the way I'm being with him, the way I'm communicating to him isn't working. And so I started going down the path of really understanding, understanding human behavior and understanding children behavior and why they say the things they say, why they act the way they act. And it led me down a path of taking a parenting course and understanding that, children and adults, everything that we say, everything that we do, it's like an expression of grief or pain that's unresolved. And so when I began to sort of orient myself from that place, I realized that, wow, if I just communicated more so from a place of love and connection versus, these are the things you have to do in order to have structure so that, you could, so that you could heal and thrive. I was looking at it backwards. I needed to learn how to connect and to like meet people with at where their pain was first, especially the kids. And so when I began to do that, our boys began to blossom. Like literally, when they came to us, they were cursing, they were swearing, they were spitting on us, right? Like, it all sounds really scary, and most people would think that, kids like that are broken. But this is what I realized. They're not. And I knew that in my heart from the beginning. They're absolutely not. They're human beings. They're scared. They feel unsafe. And all you really, I don't want to make it sound like it's simple, but there are very simple pillars to ground yourself in. And number one, it's compassion. Like understanding that their expression, what they're saying, what they're doing is all coming from a place of pain, right? And if you have the desire and the willingness to alleviate that pain for them and empower them, then their pain melts away and then they become resourceful, right? And so now, how did I transition from that to being a compassionate communication coach for women and helping women empower themselves in their marriages so that they can lead their marriage to a place of peace, love. I call it paradise as an everyday experience, from, a place where it may feel right now like there's a lot of tension and turmoil because you're just not communicating. Okay. So I realized that while all the kids were doing really well, I was watching them blossom and becoming these like really creative, magical human beings. But the relationship that I was having between me and my husband, oh my gosh, it felt like every single day was a battle. Like every single day we were both walking on eggshells just to avoid arguing with each other. And it's like a very heavy experience because we were not successful at not arguing with each other. It still happened every single day. And there was one day where I said, like we talked about separating a few times and even talked about divorce. And there was one day I said to myself, like, I just can't take this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. I feel like I'm the only one taking responsibility in our marriage. I feel like a single mom. I feel like the only responsible one, and I feel really alone. And then I decided, through help of my coach and therapists and everything, I had this realization that, how I was approaching my marriage was 1 foot in the door and 1 foot out the door. And I just decided that, like, you know what, I'm going to choose to be in my marriage. I'm really going to choose to be here. I'm going to choose to make this the best marriage that I can make it in this lifetime, right? Because I didn't want a divorce. And if, there are, people listening right now who are on the verge or they have a divorce, I just want to let you know that that's okay, right? It's just that with my path, I just didn't want a divorce. And so when I chose to go all in, that meant a lot of things. That meant that I had to take complete radical responsibility for how I was communicating to my husband and the energy I was bringing into the marriage. I had to take responsibility for how he was communicating to me, which is really radical, right? Because most people don't think that way. I didn't think that way. But when I did that, this is what I realized. I was nurturing my boys, our boys, and approaching them with so much compassion. I was not doing the same with my husband. Mm-hmm. I had this expectation that he should already show up whole and complete, perfect, almost flawless, well, reasonably flawless, and know how to be a man, know how to step up as a dad, know how to be a husband. And that's just completely false because most men don't know how to do that. They don't have the models in their lives to be able to be a high functioning father, husband, man in all areas of life and be able to emotionally meet you, right? And so I just shifted how I communicated with my husband. I met him with so much more compassion. And when I did, the same thing happened to him with him that happened with my boys. He blossomed into a totally new human being. And because of that, now we don't need to go to vacation to have paradise. Everyday life feels like paradise to us. That's why I do what I do, because if I can do it, keep in mind living in 200 square feet now, right? Like literally living in like close quarters with my husband and not killing each other. In fact, like wanting to be closer to each other. I know that every woman can do this, not because, and I'm not able to do this because I'm special, that I have a special power or skill. No, this is compassionate communication is a skill that I had to learn. I had to figure out on my own, and how to put all the different pieces together from different courses I took and different books I read and certifications that I had. I put the pieces together and deconstructed my process. And that's what I do as a compassionate communication coach. I want people to know that, whether you're married or whether you're single or looking for a relationship, or you feel stuck in being able to find the person because you're always kind of like running into the same type of issues, same type of patterns, it all boils down to communication. Mm-hmm. And it's compassionate communication is a skill. It's not a talent, it's a skill that you can learn. Mm-hmm. And it just takes practice.
Myriad of questions, but the first thing I want to ask you is, what would you say was that initial shift? Like you noticed that there was a change in the boys because you changed how you showed up for them, and then you recognized that in making that same shift with the way that you were communicating with your husband, then it made a change in him. Like, what was like the first step? Was it purely intentional? Was it something that you did? Was it energetic? Was it something that you said? What was the very first like step forward or inch forward to go, okay, I'm changing, and this is the first move?
Well, I say that the first part of change is pain. Like being at a place where you're like, I don't like what's happening right now. This is causing me a lot of turmoil. I can't continue this way. Something has to change. So it's like that pain point. It's like, meeting that brick wall. You can't move forward, right? Or you can try, but energetically, you're like, life feels miserable. So why keep going? Why keep doing the same thing over and over again? Like, that's literally insanity. So that first step is being in pain. And then the second step is having the desire to want to make a change. Okay. And for me, it's approaching things with curiosity, not falling into the trap that most of us do, which is blaming other people, blaming the situation around us, blaming the people around us on why we can't have what we want, on why things aren't easier. And so approaching it with curiosity. And then, of course, with that, you're taking responsibility, right? And the first thing I did was I started talking to people, right? And sharing with them and not hiding it all on like the frustrations I was dealing with. And I would get little like breadcrumbs here and there, right? One thing that really stuck out to me is I don't even remember who gave me this piece of advice. It was in a community that I was in, and this woman said to me that she noticed I was trying to like get the boys to eat, get the kids to eat, because they were so malnourished. And I was getting them to eat so that they can be healthier. And the way I was doing it was like through almost like control and force. Like, you have to eat. If you don't eat, you can't, XYZ. Although it came from good intentions because I wanted them to be healthy, what was missing before was connection. So she said to me that I was putting the cart before the horse. I was trying to do right by them by getting them to eat through structure, through all the only ways that I knew how, right, at the time. But you can't do that. People are not going to listen to you, whether it's your kids, your husband, or anybody, unless there's connection first. So I was putting the cart before the horse because I was doing the doing as opposed to connecting with their hearts first. And so that was probably one of the very, very first big shifts that I had, where I said to myself, I've been putting the cart before the horse. So what does it look like to put the horse first? What does it look like to connect with them first? How can I connect more with them first? And then it just kind of like unraveled and unfolded from there, like creating moments where we can have fun together, where it's not just about like, oh my God, this is an agenda that I have for them, right? Having fun with them, listening to them, allowing them to do what they like to do for half an hour a day, as opposed to me putting them on a strict schedule, right? And that made an enormous difference. Then with that connection, they were at a place where they felt like, oh, I want to listen to what this woman has to say. Mm-hmm. And the same thing applies to adults, believe it or not. So what I like to always say to my clients is connection before correction.
And what was running through my mind as well as you were saying that, because it seems like the world, or in the West at least anyway, that we know of, is so polarized at the moment. There's people just sitting on one side of the room and the other side of the room and literally yelling at each other. And it's nothing ever gets solved like that. Mm-hmm. And we're looking, that we need that kind of connection somehow. Mm. And yet it just seems like, how are we going to get there? Because nobody wants to let go of their righteousness and their point of view, and we're all kind of having this standoff where there's no compassion. We've stopped seeing the person, the human behind each other, the other person, even when they've got a view that makes no sense to us. When it's like, but you're wrong and you're wrong, it's like, well, can we get to the point where we can like drop into our reasoning for a moment and go like, what would have brought them to that point of view, to be so staunch in that belief, and then what's so staunch in my belief? We can't see each other, or no one really wants to kind of drop the bat.
Honestly, that's why I do what I do, even though I'm working with women and wives in marriages right now, there's a ripple effect to all of this. Is when they're able to have more compassion with themselves, they're learning to give themselves grace, and also like understand where their pain and where their turmoil comes from. Like for example, a lot of women, especially success-driven modern women today, in relationships, a very common dynamic that plays out is the woman is holding so much responsibility, working, being a mom, being there for your friends and your family, maintaining a household, right? And the husband, if they're lucky, then they have a husband that can really be, I don't want to say if they're lucky. I'm going to say it differently. Most relationships and most people don't know how to have a partnership. They don't know how to have a partnership where you're being honest with each other. At the same time, you're being nurturing and empowering to one another. In today's typical relationship dynamics with modern high-achieving women, we have so many goals that we want to achieve. We want to build a life for ourselves and our family, like a life of abundance, right? And the only way that we've learned how to do that is to be very masculine, to compete in this very masculine corporate world. And what happens is we bring home a lot of masculine energy into the relationship. And so when you have masculine alpha energy that you're expressing, matching the alpha energy that your husband is expressing, then you're just going to begin to compete with one another as opposed to collaborating and partnering with one another. And this applies to your boyfriend or your fiance too. right? And that's why I think, a lot of women can feel stuck in not finding the right relationship, or stuck in the relationship they're in right now, or they move on and they find another relationship, but it's like the similar pattern happens. So you have alpha energy, and so there's no harmony, there's no balance, there's no yin and yang. And I'll just speak right now to the women in these relationships. Alpha energy is very much about results oriented, mind leading, and honestly, like on the shadow side of it, on the extreme side, it's very controlling. Because it's like, it's my way. I know the right way to do things. It's my way, right? And I have to give it up for the ladies. Like, we're very capable, right? We're very capable at getting a lot of things done. That's one of our gifts. However, we become disconnected from our hearts, from our bodies, from our intuition. And this is all like layered into, what you were saying earlier, like we're so polarized in this world where we feel like we're so staunch in our beliefs. And it's all connected to this feeling of control that we need to have within ourselves, within our careers, within our marriage, with our kids. It's control everywhere. And really, when you peel back the onion, the control is an expression of pain. Because if we don't have control, then we're afraid something bad is going to happen. The same thing plays out in politics. If we're not right about our point of view, then we lose control. And then who are we? Now like the fear starts coming up, right? We lose control. We're not right anymore. The world doesn't make sense anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I love that you brought it up, because what I do, yes, like I am a coach for married women, but for me, this is a bigger picture. This is a revolution for how we all be with one another, how we all meet each other with more compassion in this world where it just seems so chaotic. It just seems so divisive right now. We literally, I believe that women, we are the keys to making this world a better place through being compassionate with ourselves and compassionate with our husbands. That's where we start.
I'm glad you said that. Everyone's just like at loggerheads all the time, it seems. I think it comes, like, you could answer this, it comes from a sense of knowing who you are at the core. Like the only way that you are able to then pull back from identifying with like either kind of political ideology or whatever narrative and kind of sitting yourself in a box, the only way that you can pull away from any of those is if you have like some core identity, like a full solid belief in knowing who you are and what that feels like. I think that's why it's so easy to have people kind of go one side or the other, and they hold on to that, because if they're not this, then they can't see that there's anything other than that, because it's like, I'm this or that, and I'm definitely not that, so I'm this. But if I move away from this, then like, who am I? Whereas like the revolution, as I'm seeing it, and getting more and noticing more people doing it, going, hang on a minute, like we're neither of those things really, because we don't necessarily 100% believe in this or that. And we can see that it, like, whether we do or we don't, like playing that game isn't bringing us forward. Right. And like the more that people are able to kind of move out and just watch the gameplay, you see the game being played then. And then suddenly it's like, hang on, there is an existence outside of this kind of ping pong, but then we've been told to be on either side of the table and trying to bash and kill each other. And it goes on for so long. One thing I wanted to ask as well, do you solely work with women in marriages, or do you work with women in single women as well?
My zone of genius is in working with married women. And so, yeah, I mainly work with married women.
So one thing we spoke about before was when you have one partner that has reached a point of, I'm going to do something about this, I'm going to start doing the work, and yet the other partner hasn't moved yet. So can you talk about what happens when that other partner starts to shift and change, as you will invariably do when you start to make some changes within yourself, and there comes a friction? The other person can see that you're changing and not necessarily really understanding what that means.
So this is so common. I mean, I'm willing to bet that 99.9% of all women who go through this like spiritual and personal awakening journey is confronted with this. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of resources out there to help you navigate this phase. I can tell you that from my experience, it was very difficult. It's very challenging for my husband and I. Despite all the work I was doing on myself, I was feeling so much more freed up and self-expressed. When it came to my marriage, I felt like I put myself in another prison, because he wasn't, interested in growing with me. Everything that I was doing, he thought was BS, and although he did go, I mentioned before, he did attend a seminar with me, it kind of like ended there for him, right? He just didn't really see the value in this work. So I would say that just, I'm just going to zoom out and give like a larger perspective, and then I'm going to zoom back in to like sort of give some more tangible, practical understanding. So from a more holistic perspective, the journey of being in a relationship while you're going through your evolution, while you're evolving and your partner isn't evolving, is actually part of the next part of your expansion. Because what we tend to do is go back to our old patterns, and we don't get what we want, because we want the best for our partners, right? We want them to grow and change with us, because we see the paradise, the abundance that's possible, the freedom that's possible. So of course, we love our partners. We want them to go on this journey with us, but we don't get it, right? It doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen right away. And then we go through this process where we question our relationship. We don't know if this is a person that's right for us anymore. And we feel alone. Maybe we feel abandoned. Maybe there are more fights and arguments that happen in the relationship. And then for some people, it may cause abandonment wounds to reemerge. Like, oh my God, if I continue down this path, then I will lose my partner. Right. Or for some people, they're like, wow, I cannot be with my partner anymore. Right? It could go either way. And so I would say that from a larger holistic perspective, it continues to be part of your evolution to learn more about yourself and to learn how to express yourself in a way that is authentic to who you are, but doesn't push people away, but instead have them be interested and enrolled in what you're up to. Okay. And when you think about it, if you develop yourself to be that type of a person, right, where you can share your honest feelings with your partner, and instead of your partner shutting down, your partner is curious because of the way you're approaching the conversation. The way you're approaching it isn't, to make him wrong, to make him feel like he needs to be fixed, but you're coming from a place of love and commitment for your relationship. And he leans in, he wants to know more. You just became a very influential person. Not just in your marriage, but you can apply this to anywhere else in your life, right? You can apply it to, family members you disagree with when it comes to politics, right? And so that's like the broader perspective here that I want to share. And then so let's zoom in here to like the different stages. I was thinking about this and I was thinking about how, wow, it is really like the 7 stages of grief that a woman goes through. Mm-hmm. So what happens? Stage 1, right, is shock. I pulled this up here. Stage 1 is shock because you have all this new information, you feel transformed, and why wouldn't other people want this too? Because you see other people suffering, you see your partner suffering or your boyfriend suffering. You want them to have this information and this transformation too. And you are completely shocked when they reject you. And then step 2 is denial. Denial that this is actually happening. Like, how can this person reject you and reject what you have to offer? Like, you're literally giving them gold and they're saying, no, I don't want it. This actually looks like shit. You're like, no, wait a minute, this is gold. And then you're in denial. You're like, no, I'll be able to convince him, right? And then you fail. He's not having it. And then you get angry. That's stage 3. Stage 3 of grief is getting angry. So then you lash out, you get into more arguments, you fight, you bicker, and it's just not a good vibe, right? And then stage 4 is bargaining. That's when you start to get manipulative. And I'm raising my hand because I've totally been there, right? You use threats. Like, oh, if you don't do this, I will leave you. If you don't do that, then you're the one that's causing our relationship to suffer. I'm doing everything I can, but you're not stepping up, right? Or if you do this, if you do read this book, if you do go to this course, then I'll be more loving towards you, right? It's very manipulative. And then that still doesn't work. Or it might work for like 2 days and then the old patterns come back because he wasn't really invested in this, right? He was only doing it out of fear to make you not be mad at him, right? Or to not lose you. And so you see the old patterns playing back, and you're like, wow, none of this is working. Now, like, you go into a depression. Like, is this relationship is it worth it? Or do I want to continue growing? Like, I don't want to lose this person. I don't want to lose my husband, my boyfriend. I don't want to lose the people in my life that I love. Stage 6 is testing, where you start like getting curious about new solutions and experimenting with different things. Stage 7 is acceptance. Stage 7 is very important because you have to get to this stage where you accept the person for exactly who they are. Nothing wrong, nothing needs to be fixed. And you accept the situation, right? The dynamic is that you are growing and your partner, for whatever reason, is not on board. And when you can come to this place of acceptance and also accepting your partner for exactly who he is right now, then now you can make a decision. You can make a decision not from fear of abandonment, not from a place of manipulation, but you can actually ask yourself, what path do I want to take now? Do I want to continue to grow? Or do I want to stay in this relationship, or do I want to leave? No one can make that decision for you. But just know that there is a process for you to get to this place of acceptance. And when you get there, you'll have the clarity to make the decision on your own. And if you're wondering, how will I know? You'll know when you're not making a decision, a choice from fear. When you're making it from a place of what's possible in your life.
So what did it look like, using your example, your your experience or what you've seen in your clients, when there was a turnaround, when you've got to that place, or the woman's got to that place of acceptance, and it's like, okay, this is where I'm coming from now. So what are the things that you notice that is shifting, that then gives you the confidence that, you know, you've turned a corner and you're going into now the potential beginning of the road to paradise that you've experienced?
Curiosity. Yeah. Because when you don't accept something, you know, you don't accept the person, then you already put them in a box of who they should be, who you should be, what your life should look like. And you're already making judgments about them and their behaviors, you know, like when they, you know, don't want to participate in growing with you, you're making a judgment about who they are. You know, maybe they're never going to be a husband material. Maybe they're never going to be the type of, you know, husband that I can have deep conversations with, that I can grow with. So when you let that go, then you just created an open space for curiosity to emerge. And then when curiosity emerges, you can start questioning the beliefs and the truths that you used to have. Like, is it true that that I'm going to be abandoned? Why do I have this fear of abandonment in the first place? Where did this come from? Is that true? You know, is it true that he's not ever going to grow and evolve? Or, you know, maybe there may be a pattern showed up for him that really gets under your skin. Like, for example, anger. Maybe the other day he had road rage and he got triggered. He, you know, used very aggressive language and made you feel unsafe. You've just asked him to stop many, many times, and he never listens to you. And so that feeling of unsafety, like begins to, you know, wash over you, right? When you get to this place, you can, instead of reacting from your emotions and your triggers, you can actually be curious. And you can actually question the truths that you thought before. You know, you actually open yourself up to new truths. Like, you know what? Maybe right now he's not ready, but maybe he'll be ready in the future. I can't dictate and control my partner's path. That's his journey. I have to respect and honor that. Right? Or, you know, the road rage, maybe that's an expression of his pain. What is he afraid of? And what if I can meet that with compassion as opposed to judgment? You just built a connection. Before there was separation. He was an other, right? And now you just built a bridge. That's the shift.
Right. And it, like, again, like correlating, like within the home, within the marital relationships, just plays out again. You know, seeing how if we could just all do that, but you know, it's such a big ask, obviously. At this point in time, when people are not necessarily doing the work on that level. Yeah. What have you discovered about yourself going forward? How has all of this informed your work? And if someone came to you kind of speaking about being in the place that you were at, you know, before you went through this transformation and understanding compassion as a means for communication, what would be like the kind of the, you know, people want a short answer, people want a soundbite of, you know, they come to you, go like, Julie, I know you do this and this is what I'm going through, and like, you know, I'm dreading going home tonight, and you know, like a short, sharp thing that like, I'm dreading going home tonight because, like you say, every day there's another thing, there's a thing that's going to pop off, even though we're trying not to annoy each other. Somehow we've got to the point where just each other's breath is a problem. You know, you've got to that.
Each of us blinking is a problem.
But still alive.
Yeah.
What kind of first base thing could someone do that would just maybe mitigate having something go off at that point in time? Even if it doesn't solve the bigger problem, is there something that could be within themselves or something that they could say?
Yeah. This is huge. Getting into the habit of celebrating yourself.
Right.
Getting into the habit of appreciating all the little things about you. You know, like how you, I don't know, like your voice. Maybe it's your. I know you're a music singing coach. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's, you know, how you showed up at work today in a more open way. Maybe it's that you took time out to work out today. Maybe you are so busy, you have so much on your plate, but you took out 2 minutes to meditate. You did that for you. Celebrating yourself for all the small wins is tremendous. That is like 80% of the work, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And here's why. Number one, it puts you in a better mood. You're in a place, in a higher vibrational state. You're centering yourself around wholeness, right? That instead of looking for what's wrong with you, you're looking for what's right with you. Number two, when you're filling your cup with what's right about you, you just feel better. You feel better. You're in a much better mood. You feel happy. You feel alive. And guess what you're going to be bringing into your relationship? More lightness, more play, more gratitude. Here's the other reason why it's important. What's missing in most relationships is appreciation for one another. Because again, you know, we're all wired to look for what's wrong. That's our, you know, survival lizard brain that we've had for 10,000 years that helped us, you know, keep us alive from the saber-toothed tiger. And, you know, even though we've evolved significantly, that part of our brain is still hyperactive or overactive. So we're constantly like on a quest to look for what's wrong about us and what's wrong with our partners. Mm-hmm. So unless you start looking for what's right about you and really celebrate what's right about you, there is no way that you're able to see all those little things that's right about your husband or your partner. There's no way, because you don't have the radar for that. Mm-hmm. So start celebrating yourself. And I'm not even talking about the big things. I actually want everyone here to celebrate yourself for the little things, right? As the more frivolous, the smaller it is, the better. Mm-hmm. And then I want you to translate that and celebrate your partner for all the little things that he does, like taking out the trash, like, you know, texting you back right away, or, you know, like picking up milk at the grocery, whatever it is. When you're celebrated about the small things, it's like better than being celebrated about like the monumental, like, you know, boulder that you lifted. And here's why. Because if you're only celebrating yourself or your partner for the big things, you know what what's the translation of that? I will only receive love from you if I do more, if I achieve more. Who I am today is not enough. So you challenge that. You counter that by more gratitude and appreciation for all the little things. And that's where you start.
That's really good. Because it doesn't like, and you know, I'm always kind of saying how it plays out in so much, and I got so much from that as well. Just, you know, I'm like, yeah, you know, let me take on board of, you know, a way that I can just like make that be something in my own day. I suppose as well, like coming from the point of view of entrepreneurs, coaches, trying to like build these businesses and bring people in, and we have these big dreams that we're always kind of going for the big, that we forget all the tiny little steps that we take on a day-to-day basis that actually make all of those things happen and bring all of those things in as well. So you're giving me an image to kind of translate to so many different things as well, but that celebrate the little things is so beautiful.
So glad to hear that. That's why like this type of work, even though it's about communication with your husband, it's really about compassion for yourself. It's really about falling in love with yourself, because you can only meet your partner at the depth of which you've met yourself.
Great stuff. So can you just let everyone know, Julie, where they can find you, where they can connect with your work?
Yes. So they can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, on my website. Everything is Lead with Julie Tran, and I'm sure you'll put the link in below. And I wanted to share a special gift that I have for your listeners. And this is perfect for women who are married, or if you're not married, this is also perfect for you if you are looking, or if you want to be married in the future. I created a quiz called the Healthy Marriage IQ. And I created it because there's so much, you know, popular marriage advice out there, like these one-liners like happy wife, happy life, marriage should be 50-50. And we all like take it at face value without questioning it. 95% of this advice is bullshit. And if you believe it, it's going to cost you your potential marriage, or it's costing you right now harm in your marriage. And so I created a quiz. It's less than a minute long for you to test your marriage IQ and get the right answers to the you know, popular marriage wisdom that's out there. So I'll make sure to get that to you as well.
Thank you, Julie, for sharing your story, and thank you for listening. Check the link in the show notes below that will take you to Higher Energetic Resonance Inspiration Podcast, and also a link for you to join the mailing list, where you'll receive additional learning points for you to meditate, journal, and contemplate as you continue on your own self-work journey. You'll also receive the free Embody Higher Energetic Resonance 6-day course. If you're ready to take a next step with me on your transformation with support, accountability, and radical honesty, contact me again via the link in the show notes to find out more about my one-to-one personalized spiritual life coaching program. My website is carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaewhittick.com. On Facebook, it's Carol May Whittick. On Instagram, Kazmic, Kazmick. So until the next episode, enjoy, take care.